In the autumn of 2002, Vodafone launched its brand new Vodafone Live portal across several of its European markets. Launching together with the exclusive Sharp GX10, the new service via GPRS would offer picture messaging and entertainment downloads amongst many other offers, and Sharp from Japan had just the right phone to help you make the most of Vodafone's brand new mobile internet service. Welcome to today's episode of the Flipside Story. Please join me on a little trip down memory lane to explore the Sharp GX10i and some of its family members. So the first family member of the GX family is the GX1. Now this phone is a bit of a black sheep in the family because it is exclusive to O2. For whatever reason, I do not know, so if you have any info, please send it my way and I'll publish it. The GX1 is the GSM cousin of the JPhone SH06, which is the successor of the SH04, which most of you know as the world's first camera phone. So what we find here is that it's obviously a little bit bulkier. And by that I'm not meaning to fat shame it, but let's start from the beginning so you guys get my train of thought. The Sharp GX1 was released in October of 2002 and the SH06 in April of 2001. Now this is significant because there's about a year and a half between these two. When we look at the technology, we're dealing with a GSM device of 900 and 1800 MHz and a PDC device of 1500 MHz. And PDC is or was the local 2.5G standard in Japan. There was no GSM in Japan at all, but PDC and GSM are related technologies. Then looking at the actual size of the phone, you can see on screen the measurements, and here is where things get slightly weird because the newer model is bigger and heavier, and especially in terms of the size, we can go, well, it's 110 grams versus 74 grams. It's bigger and heavier than the Sharp SH06, which is older in technology. The only benefit that we see here is that, of course, the GX1 is antenna-less, and the GX1 has a much larger screen, or not much larger, but it has a 2-inch screen versus a 1.8-inch screen at a slightly higher resolution of 120 pixels by 160 versus 96 by 130. Also, the GFC stands for Glass Fine Color, which is an improved STN color screen at 65,000 colors. We have on both phones, as you can see here, the 0.1 megapixel CMOS camera. As you can see, sunlight legibility of the screen is terrible in bright light, but I've posted some of the screenshots of the options of the user interface, and you can see that there is a little bit to choose from and in different sizes, and you can take up to 25 large photos. In the Japanese version, you can even choose the file format, which I found interesting, but yeah, not sure what benefit that would bring. One of the bugbears of these phones up to the GX20 actually is that they don't allow you to transfer files via infrared. So this one has an infrared port, this one actually doesn't, but you can't even connect it to a computer and get the images off the phone. You have to send them by MMS or email off the phone to view them. And I will use the GX10 camera as a sample or as a sort of benchmark. Now to that little segue, which I think worked quite well, I'm going to go back to the conversation I was just having, and that is how I'm going to use the GX10i to show you sample photos. Well, actually, when I first got this phone, I was able to download images via cable, and this is what you can do with the 10X or the GX10, sorry, that you couldn't do with the GX1. But I don't have the cable at the moment because when I moved to Iceland, it got lost somewhere. And when I say lost, it's somewhere in one of my boxes, and yes. Anyways, I've got cables coming, but it's going to take a little while. I have photos from Hong Kong that I will use to show you what the quality of the GX10i looks like. Now, whilst I've got you on the topic, GX10i versus GX10. Okay, so there's a slight color change I think the GX10i came in like dark grey and GX10 was a light grey, but the only major difference, or minor difference so to speak, is the support of tri-band on the 10i that was just dual band on the 10. In terms of camera and all other specs, they're exactly identical, and this is just the phone that I got at the time, and if I can find a decent GX10, I will definitely get one in the future. So for those of you who noticed on the entry scene that the two phones looked alike but they didn't, and there was something odd about the GX10 on the right, well, you're absolutely right. The GX10 on the left is the Sharp version, and what is this thing on the right? It is a Motorola. But how is it possible? Let's go and take a look. So here we have the Sharp GX10i and Motorola V750 side by side, and as you can see, they're pretty close. As a matter of fact, they're identical when you look at the internals, like the configuration of the antennas and weight, size, everything exactly the same. And this points us toward a white label agreement, or an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer, in this case Sharp, providing phones to Motorola. Now this is not unusual. We've seen this before in Japan with Nokia and Sanyo, for example, and the J-Phone series, and HTC has done this a lot before with O2, iMate and T-Mobile as an example. So it's not uncommon to have white label products with different labels and logos slapped on top. But what I can't figure out here is why Motorola was doing it, and I don't see any information anywhere. So if you know anything, do let me know. And the same goes, of course, for the firmware. So if you look at the Motorola firmware, it is similar to the GX1 firmware that we've seen for O2 in a blue color scheme. And then we have the red firmware for Vodafone, a red and white version of it. Last but not least, here is the camera. Same menu options as the GX1, same sizes. After all, it's a 0.1 megapixel sensor, so the exact same options that we can find on the SH06 or the GX1, and the images will also be the same roughly. So what we have here in the attachment is that the images are really small compared to a nowadays 4K or 1080p screen, but I'll blow them up for you a little bit so you can see the detail, and the sharpness isn't there. There's a lot of grain, a lot of noise, a lot of blur. But that's just what you get for a first generation digital camera. And next up, we've got two amazing phones which I owned, the GX20 and the GX30. Both of these phones are absolutely amazing. And for the GX20, I had to say, when I first saw it in the shop in 2003, I couldn't get my eyes off it. Absolutely stunning form factor. The screen, huge and vibrant, QVGA screen. The camera was fantastic, clear, vibrant, and the GX30 provided the necessary benefits of the GX20 by adding SD card support. We had also Bluetooth in here and the quad band functionality, which didn't matter as much to me, but it certainly mattered to travelers. And let's go and take a look at some more details of these lovely phones. Here we have the GX20 and GX30 in their global Vodafone branding, and of course these came in many variations across different markets. And so here we can also see the GX22 and 32 for Smartone in Hong Kong, which became Smartone Vodafone between 2005 and 2011. Now going back to the GX20 and 30, the difference is here on screen we have release dates. The releases between different models were a lot shorter than they're today. We have a tri-band and quad band GSM phone here, as you can see. The differences in weight and size are minor actually. They kept the sizes pretty consistent. And then we have, of course, the camera, which is a huge jump from a VGA cam to a 1 megapixel cam. And I believe this is, the GX30 was Europe's first megapixel camera. In addition, we have the SD card on the GX30, which The main benefit really is for the camera and not so much the other multimedia functions, since the media player wasn't really that great on the phone. In addition, here we can also see the screen differences. Both come with a QVGA screen, 5000 and 260,000 colors. I finally got my cables for the phone, so now I can download the photos of the GX10i and present them here to you side by side. In front of us we have the relative sizes of the 0.1 megapixel camera up to a megapixel, and then of course I'm going to zoom in slightly so you can see the detail of each photo. And it's obvious that the GX10i as a first generation camera phone was a lot less detailed than the 1 megapixel GX30, but the difference between the GX20 and GX30 isn't as much aside from size. It's still sort of the resolution and grain are roughly the same, but you have more detail in the GX30 of course. Now before I bring this to a close, I wanted to take another look at the Japanese cousins of the GX family over in Japan, and here we have on the left NTT Docomo's Sharp SH251IS, which was launched in 2002 and is also known as the world's first 3D LCD mobile phone. Now I've got a separate video on that phone on my channel, so please do check it out, but when I first saw it I immediately had to think of the GX20, and it's pretty obvious why. Just looking at the body shape and the screen placement, camera placement, it's wow, they're so similar. And next up we're looking at the GX30, and here we have its cousins over on the Vodafone network in Japan, the V601SH on the very right, and the V801SH in the middle in red, which is also Vodafone's first 3G mobile phone on the Vodafone Japan network. That brings me to the end of this little insight today. I hope you enjoyed it. We went through the GX1, the GX10, the GX20, the GX30, and all of the related phones that we could imagine. Now that's quite a lot to cover, and I hope that you have some questions for me. Please subscribe to the channel. It's so much fun to make these for you, but it's even more fun to hear from you. So give me your feedback, give me your likes, give me your subscriptions. Please suggest things that you want to hear about, that you're interested in, because you know I got this from a lovely follower here, subscriber, and I thought, you know what, this is a great topic, and I want to hear more from you guys on what it is that you want to see. So thank you again for joining me, and see you next time.